Keys to the Shop, episode 207, Hope in Difficult Times with Kathy Turiano of Joe Bean Coffee Roasters. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and I'm so excited to have you with me today. I think this episode today is just fantastic. Couldn't have been a more appropriate for what is happening in the industry today. I'm welcoming back Kathy Turiano of Joe Bean Coffee Roasters. Kathy was on the show way back in May of 2017 as a Founder Friday, and I've linked to that in the show notes, but this conversation is very powerful and appropriate for what most of us are going through today. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is an amazing specialty coffee equipment supplier that is based here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I just am thrilled that I get to have them as a sponsor of this show because I love their heart for the community, for specialty coffee, and you can tell by the way that they conduct their business and when you interact with them as a customer. They provide the best coffee equipment that they curate from all over the world, and then they work hard to match that with the needs of their customers. So whatever your commercial coffee equipment needs are, grinders, brewers, espresso machines, or even things like under-counter refrigeration, they have what you need over at prima-coffee.com. And another thing that I love about Prima is the amount of resources that they have invested in producing for your benefit for free. When you go to the website, videos about how to use the grinders and brewers, how to do latte art, how to brew great coffee. It's all there for you to learn for free because their heart, again, is to see you be successful in specialty coffee. So go to the website, prima-coffee.com/keys in order to let them know that you heard about them from this show, and check them out. Reach out and see what they can do to help you get the right equipment for your situation. prima-coffee.com/keys. This episode is also brought to you by the amazing Pacific Barista Series. Pacific has always been a huge supporter of the barista community, coffee community globally, and these plant-based performance beverages in the Barista Series line are just evidence of that fact. They make these not only for professional baristas, but right alongside some of the world's best baristas that give them incredible feedback about the performance of these products, so that when you use it on your bar, you're using something that will take the heat from steaming, make it possible to do any kind of latte art, no matter what you choose from the line, and also keep the flavor balance of your beverage focused on the coffee. So it's not this overwhelming almond or overwhelming hemp flavor. It's tactful, it's tasty, and it's just an amazing product from great people. So I would encourage you, get this in your store, try it out for yourself. The Barista Series line from Pacific will definitely elevate the plant-based offerings in your cafe. Go to pacificfoods.com and find more information. You can go follow the link in the show notes for that. And if you want to offer your customers the best plant-based beverages, then you're going to want the Pacific Barista Series in your cafe. All right, so today we are welcoming back to the show Kathy Turiano of Joe Bean Coffee Roasters. Joe Bean is an award-winning coffee shop and roastery in Rochester, New York. They are the first third-wave coffee shop in Rochester, one of the prime movers of coffee in the city, and have been constantly setting the bar for excellence in anything they do, from how they serve their customers in the cafe to how they roast their coffee and how they source their coffee through their direct trade programs and their farming partners. This company is a dynamo, and they are super humble and sweet, joyful people. I love interacting with them. One of the bright spots in specialty coffee for sure. And I think that's really going to come across in this episode. Now, if you remember back in 2017 when we talked with Kathy originally, change in kind of iterating the brand over time was one of the things that marked their journey. And in today's conversation, it's definitely the theme also. During that conversation, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And from that conversation on, over a year and a half or so, an entire shift in the way that Kathy's company needed to operate was underway, and how they responded to that challenge and those difficult circumstances that we'll talk about in this conversation, I think is going to give you hope also. This interview took place before all of this coronavirus crisis really hit the fan. And as I'm listening through this episode, editing it, I am just shaking my head in disbelief that so much of it is appropriate for this time. Call it serendipity, call it prophetic, but I am so excited to share this with you because we need messages of hope like this in our ears, in our hearts, in our brains. There is a lot to be fearful of right now. And I think Kathy offers us a lifeline from her own experience in navigating difficult changes with her business. So not only are we going to hear the story about that, but we're going to learn a lot about how to lead yourself and others in the midst of those circumstances, and some ways that maybe will help you in your business as you navigate this particular challenge that we're all facing on a global level, but also the challenges that just normally come with business. So without anything more from me, let's get right to this interview, finding hope in difficult circumstances and times, with Kathy Turiano of Joe Bean Coffee Roasters. Well, Kathy, welcome back to Keys to the Shop. It is just a thrill to have you back.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I'm so excited to be with you.
This is a conversation that seems to be on brand for your brand, because we've talked about on your last episode here on Keys to the Shop, which was all the way back in August of 2017. It seems like ages ago, but one of the things we discussed was the evolution of your brand and your business, and the kind of things that you had to do to pivot in the midst of circumstance and changing your focus and all of that stuff. And I just wanted to dive into your current circumstances, because I've been obviously I follow you on social media, and you all continue to do amazing work in Rochester for specialty coffee. So I wonder if you could sort of start us off here by talking a little bit about what has transpired in the last year and a half or so, because I know you had to move from the location that you were in our first interview.
Right.
So what's behind that? What kind of led to that circumstance?
Oh boy. Okay, that's a big question. uh, and I would say a lot of things. Decisions like this kind of happen over time, and so really, it was sort of a 3-year process that we went through. Pretty much from the when I spoke to you, maybe in 2017. It really started in a year prior to that, in 2016. You say it's on brand for us. I think myself personally, I'm the type of person that really loves change, but I also really love sameness. So I know that sounds sort of contradictory,
That's awkward.
but yeah, but it is true. Once I change, I love the new situation, and I am a very loyal, sort of committed person, and I want to stay and do the thing that I just got to for forever and forever, and I would stay there for a long time. And I think the last time we talked, and like you said, our company had kind of pivoted and come into a new space, and we were doing some really incredible stuff in our space, and we had launched a kitchen, and it was Latino focused, and we had jazz on the weekends, and we had launched a beer and wine menu, and just a lot of things that I really loved. And with all of that, our business was changing and expanding, and we had kind of come to some places where we needed to physically change our space, expand our space, because we were doing as well as we needed to purchase a new roaster, because our current roaster was just not able to meet our capacity needs. So all of those things, seem very positive, and we went into all of that with, sort of bright-eyed, and thinking it was all going to be great. And problems really arose with a number of things pretty early on, after we purchased our new roaster, and once we started to try to expand our space. Almost immediately upon arrival and install of our big beautiful new roaster, we began to see some real issues with it, some pretty big issues with it. And the roaster itself, once we started using it, we could roast with it, but it would periodically shut itself down, which is really bad for a
Wow.
roaster. Yeah, it would be in the middle of the roast. It was having all kinds of technical and electrical issues. And so, of course, we were in touch with the manufacturer, and we were very aggressive about talking to them, and they were responsive at first, and then over time it became a little more reluctant, as they sort of realized that it wasn't going to be an easy fix. There wasn't a part to replace. It wasn't a matter of something being worn out, or something being slightly off. It really had some inherent problems to it that needed a lot more discovery in order to even kind of figure out what was going on. So with all that, it spiraled a lot for us. It became sort of a few years of trying to work with the manufacturer and trying to discover what was going on with the machine and kind of overcome it. And as things kind of got worse and worse, it was harder and harder for our roasting team to kind of maintain being positive and sort of keep moving forward.
I want to kind of interject here also that, you're a Good Food Award-winning roastery. I mean, this is something that you are very good at, roasting coffee. So I think that needs to be said here too, in that, you're not just imagining these things are happening with your roaster. Like, these are like things that a seasoned operator is realizing about a piece of equipment. So it's definitely like, it's legit, because sometimes these things happen where it's like, oh, well, I don't know what's going on with this machine, but I also don't know what I'm doing. But you all are like expert roasters, and this is happening, so it's really holding you back. And it's the fear that so many people have when they purchase a large piece of equipment. I mean, an espresso machine is one thing. That's like night and day, wringing your hands, sleepless nights, and then you finally purchase it. But a roaster, that's like, is way more expensive. It can burn your whole place down.
Right.
It's a huge deal. So you're kind of living through this nightmare that a lot of people have about large scale purchases.
Exactly. Yeah, Chris. It was a big purchase for us. We actually spent almost 2 years researching what we wanted to purchase and what company we wanted to go with, and why. We chose a company that we thought was very reputable in the industry, and one that we felt really good about working with. So it was not a small decision. It was a really large decision, and it was one that we went in with really, again, a lot of research. So yeah, it was to have so many problems with it. We have very seasoned roasters, and they are very technical, so they do understand the equipment very well. And to have so many issues was a big surprise for us, as well as pretty heartbreaking. I can tell you, one day, probably one of my lowest days that I've probably ever had as a business owner was on my birthday
Oh no.
in 2017. Yes, it was my birthday. And the machine at that point, we had a technician on site. The company did send a tech to us, and we were once again kind of, circling back around to what's going on with this. And at that point, the machine had completely died. We couldn't even begin to roast on it. And this was really a pivotal moment for us, because I thought, we can't return it. We can't sell it. We can't use it. I don't know what we're going to do. And the company, at that point, the tech received a phone call from her boss, And basically her boss indicated that she just needed to leave and not continue to try to work with us to fix it. And that
Wow.
was a decision that the company had made. And she got off the phone call, told us what was going to happen, and then she left. And our roasting team, myself and our roasting team, I mean, honestly, we were angry, we were heartbroken, we were really kind of in shock, at that moment as to what we were going to do. But I remember my head roaster, Janine, talking to me and saying, "You know what, Kathy?" She said, "We have to go out and talk to the tech." She said, "We need to let her know that it's not her, that she didn't fail us." This was actually a woman who had come a few times to our place, and we had sort of grown a good relationship with her. And so we decided right in that moment, I thought, you know what? I cannot see this situation destroying other people. And as much as it was heartbreaking for us, I thought we're going to take the high road. And so we went out to the parking lot, and she was in her car, her rental car, and she was crying. And we knocked on the window, and she rolled it down, and I said, "Listen," I said, "I just want you to know that you did not fail us." And I said, I want you to know how much we appreciate all the efforts that you've put in to work with our company. And it was a real moment,
Oh,
for us as
man.
a team. And we all hugged and, really kind of cried together, which was very unusual. I'm actually kind of crying thinking about what that moment meant for us. And, it was right then that I thought, we have to change. Whatever we need to do to ensure that this situation doesn't not only destroy us as a company, but doesn't destroy my people and the people around us. We just need to do. So I point to that only as, I think from that moment on, it was kind of the lowest moment for us, but it was also the pivotal change moment as far as me personally.
I think that what's so impressive in this is that the instinct is first to care for people, to make sure that they're okay. And even though you're forecasting what's going to happen to your company in the midst of this news, making room for the care of another person that's not even technically on your staff, but is involved with you're in this professional relationship with, is huge. And kudos. I mean, that's so refreshing to hear, and is not surprising based on what I think we've learned about your values in your company and how those are flesh out in the your operations, everything else. So now you've got this reality that you need to deal with. And up until that point, it must have been like, well, this is going to be the visit that really solves our problem. Or, maybe it's just this one thing and we've got a breakthrough. But at that point, it must have seemed like, well, there is nowhere to go from here except away from this situation. It can't be fixed, so it needs to change. And so what was the next step for you in that process?
Yes, and you're naming it, Chris, exactly where we were. We thought every time they sent a tech, we thought, this is it. They're just going to change this one part, or they're going to tweak this one thing, and away we go, and then we'll be on the beautiful path to happy roasting. But that was the moment that I thought, okay, something really extreme needs to happen. And what we ended up doing, I'm sort of this firm believer that when it looks like there's nothing that you can do, I think that there always is something. And many times that something is small. And it can be those small steps that kind of open up opportunity and big change. And so our small step was to reach out to a couple of coffee professionals, colleagues that we really trusted in the industry, and to say, okay, here's what we're dealing with. Can you help us? And they made a few phone calls on our behalf. And the next thing we know, the president actually of this particular manufacturing company actually had called me and said that he realized that there was some big issues going on with the machine. And he put together a team of engineers on their end to begin to look into this. So that was the first step to some sense of, okay, we've gone up the food chain here, and we're going to get some resolution to this. They did end up finding out that there was some pretty major software issues going on with our machine. And so they did send some engineers. We did resolve some of that, but unfortunately, it didn't resolve all the issues that we ended up having with the machine. We were able to start using it again, but it did still have some of the prior issues that we were having, where it was shutting itself down, and then some of the electrical issues. So it was a patch. We were able to move to the next step, but again, I really had to take a step back and look at where we were as a company. It had been a 3-year process for us to get to that moment. And honestly, overall, it was a long, kind of heartbreaking fight. And, I didn't even mention, in the midst of sort of dealing with all of the issues that we were dealing with our roaster, we were also dealing with some stuff with our landlord. We had been trying to take over some space in the building, and that wasn't going very well. We had a great relationship with him, but I think as he saw kind of our company prospering, he saw more opportunity, and he was taking a little bit of an advantage there of us, and pushing us to do things that we hadn't agreed to do in the building. So we were sort of fighting on that end, fighting on the roasting end. And then, just personally, we were going through some stuff. My mom got sick right in the middle of that, and ended up passing away.
Oh no,
so,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. She had a wonderful life, and it was actually a sweet time for her and I in the midst of, all this other stuff. And so I think by the time we came through that 3-year process, I really kind of say it had crushed our spirit. And that's not a small thing to come to. I realized that sort of individually, and then as a company, we really needed new life.
To say the least. I mean, so you've got all of these different battles on all these different fronts, and so you've got this feeling that I think in the midst of your when you reflect on your history as a company, and you and I were, I think, half joking before we recorded that you kind of have practiced for this type of moment where you've been good at pivoting for all these times. So in this moment now, where a lot of things kind of seemed hopeless, what was the first sign of, okay, here's the path out of this? How do we regain that light that we need, that hope that we need to continue to thrive as a business and as a team?
I think 2 things really brought us what I consider to be kind of our new life. The first was really getting new partners. We got some new partners in our mix. And I'm just going to shout out to my new partners because I know they're going to be listening to this. It's just an incredible team of people. And honestly, Chris, they brought not just resources that we needed, but they also brought encouragement to us. I think right at that moment they came in and they saw not only what Joe Bean sort of was in the past, or maybe had been and maybe lost a little bit, but they actually saw us and saw what we could be. And they started speaking that into us on a regular basis. And that alone sort of lifts you up, and you then start to see what is possible again. And I think the second thing for us really was the move, the actual move to a new space. And with that move to a new space came the adoption for us as a company of really a new concept and a new direction. And I think all of that is that breath of fresh air. It feels like that that wave of kind of like when you bring a brand new baby home, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and into a family, and everybody suddenly just wants to, you know, look at the baby and talk about the baby and the possibilities of that new life, just come into you and fill you with hope and with joy. And I think that's what happened with us, is that we were at this, you know, really kind of low moment where we looked around and thought, how are we going to move past this? And the fact that we did move physically, you know, move, and then, you know, in our own beings began to move past that moment. I think all of those things then break open the new in many ways.
So now, when you moved, was it to a smaller space, and was it only because of the rent, or I imagine this roasting thing also played some part in it, in that you need to get a new roaster. It's going to cost a lot of money. You probably lost a lot of money messing around with this thing over the years. So was it kind of a combination of all of that it inspired the physical move of your store?
So the funny thing, Chris, is that our new space is actually not smaller.
Mm,
Our new space is reconfigured differently, but it's actually a little bit larger than our old space.
interesting.
But you know, it kind of helped that one of our new partners in the business, is a lawyer. So that really began to help us. He really came in and helped us with some legal advice and navigating the situation with our roaster. So the recovery of our business, we did have some recovery to do financially. And, you know, some of that came from being able to negotiate a buyback of the roaster and then a purchase of a new roaster for us. And he really was pivotal in helping us navigate all of that, and kind of bring us into, you know, a new world, if you will. The new space is configured so differently, because it's much more production focused. So in many ways, we kind of say that we brought our roastery into the light. If you
I
ever went to
see.
our old
Yeah.
space, our roastery was all hidden in the back, and most of our space was retail space and cafe space or kitchen space. And so we really flipped our model completely when we moved. We do have a coffee bar out front, but the coffee bar is really immersed into our production area. So I think, you know, then as a company, we began to really shift how we thought of ourselves as more of a company focused on wholesale and online, with a retail component, but a retail component was not the core of us. It was more of a piece of us, but not the only piece.
Why why is that? Why take the opportunity at this moment to double down on the production side? Because if anything, my thought would be, okay, we've had so many issues, and it's so great that you got a buyback and you got a new roaster. That's amazing. A lot of people just don't have, like, they don't know what their rights are or what legal recourse they have in those situations. So that's such a blessing. Now, the idea that you've been burned for so long with roasting, now you're sort of banking more on roasting than ever before and less on retail, which wasn't really the problem. So it does seem, slightly counterintuitive considering the history. So I wonder what's behind the idea of that reconfiguration and refocus.
Sure. I think that when you go through problems, or when you navigate your way through situations that are difficult and you come through on the other side, one of the big things that we did, and I think a lot of people do this, is sort of reevaluate who you are and what's important to you, and what your core is. And honestly, Chris, like, coffee is our core. And supporting our farmers and working with our farming partners, and, you know, really being able to showcase that, became the one thing that we wanted to do. And um, bringing it back, I understand what you're saying about wholesale and online, but, you know, for us, that is the core of how we want to serve. We want to be able to partner with people and showcase our coffee, and support our wholesale customers. And it was a portion of our business that really was growing and is growing. And it was the thing that led us to purchase a new roaster in the beginning. We were sort of back to 2016, if you will. We bought a new roaster because that whole side of the business was already a big piece for us and was already growing. And I think the retail component, if we look at, we were open 7 days a week. We were open from 7 in the morning until midnight most nights, and it was a big strain, and it took a lot out of our team, especially out of some of the core players, like my other two partners, my son and my partner Dina. And much of what we went through, I think there was a lot of things kind of happening under the surface. And when you are sort of stretched thin as a team to begin with, and then you encounter any problems at all, those are harder and harder to deal with because you don't have the energy or the capacity to deal with them. And so when we went through some of the issues that we went through, I think it also showcased us that we couldn't keep having a huge retail component and a big wholesale component and an online component, that we really needed to simplify our model.
Do you think that you would have gotten to that point eventually had this not happened?
No. I think, once again, kind of how we started, I think I'm the type of person that holds on to things until long past the time that you should hold on to it. And I think I wouldn't have seen it. We're all kind of like that. I think that we stick it out or keep it going, or just keep doing what we were doing sort of out of that sense of I should, or maybe some sense of loyalty. And there was a lot about, the evening portion of our retail that we loved. There was just so much there that I really liked and would have kept, even when it was definitely a little stressful for us.
And that seems kind of scary to think about. Like, you could have just gone on in perpetuity, just doing the thing that might not have been so central, even though you were kind of giving a little bit more attention to that with the original purchase of that larger roaster. It's so interesting to think that so much of this has produced something better for you and more central to what's really driving you to stay in and thrive in coffee.
That is the thing, when you navigate trouble, I think it can bring you to, in many ways, you strip out other things and recognize who you really are and what the core is and what's important to you.
I'm curious about how now you've got this. I think you seem like a very positive person generally, like an optimist.
Thank
maybe
you.
Believing the best in people and circumstance and making good seems very also pragmatic, something that's developed also over time running a business. That we've been talking about how this has turned out for the good, and how your new space is bringing new life to your staff and your business. Now I'm thinking about also, though, the community of people who are slightly, I don't know, maybe they're upset that you're moving a location. Maybe they're not understanding, like, why? Well, we love this cafe. We love the events, and we take friends there. It's like the best cafe in Rochester. And so there's this community of customers that aren't really privy to all the details and the stresses that you are, that might not be able to vibe on the same positive outlook, like this is going to be so much better and we see the light at the end of the tunnel. For them, it might seem dark. I mean, I don't know. Just how did that go down? How did you break the news, and what was the response that your clientele had?
Well, there was definitely disappointment, and there were definitely customers that loved what we were doing and wanted us to keep doing it. And that was what they knew about Joe Bean. Like you said, I love the brunch, or, I really love your evening jazz, or, whatever component it was about Joe Bean. And that's what I know about you, and that's what I want you to be. And I think, for us, being able to really empathize with that, and understand that change is hard, and that there is some disappointments that come along with the thing that you want not being there anymore. And the way we kind of dialogued out there about it was, we said, we get it. We understand. We are making some changes for a lot of reasons. And at first, we weren't really able to share some of our full story, mainly because we were in legal dialogue with the company and trying to kind of navigate our way through that. So we were more cautious
Right.
about talking about some of our troubles. But as we became more free and able to, sort of share that part of our life, we really saw customers understand it, and we brought them along with us. And we saw a lot of people really decide that they, in many ways, it connected us more with them. That we were a company that was moving forward despite things, and that they could personally relate to that. And I think that became an important sort of bonding moment for us and our customer base. By the way, we have amazing customers. Kudos out there to all of our customers who really navigated and walked with us through this whole kind of crazy situation. But we have seen that most of our customers have been very loyal to us, have stayed with us, and there's also just been very positive about our new space. And one of the things that happened pretty early on, once we've moved, was that we were able to really showcase some of the new things that we wanted to bring forth. And one of those things was being able to host our farming partners, something that we had really no spot to do in our old location. And it really didn't fit into even kind of the format of a cafe, was to bring our farming partners in. And so Christian Starry from Truth Trading Company came last spring, right when we moved. And we were able to have him come and do a public cupping with our customer base and talk about his farm in Guatemala, and really engage with our regular everyday customers that walked in, and they loved it. They just absolutely loved meeting him, and seeing that we are connected at the farm, and that we do direct trade. And then in the fall, we were able to host Ben Weiner from Gold Mountain Farming Company, and that was just another really incredible experience for us and for our customers as well. So I think immediately showing the new was a pivotal thing, in order to say we didn't just disappoint you. We're bringing you through and into the new with us.
Yeah, it seems like there's two fronts. The one is that it wasn't just a whim. One day you read an article and decided that you're going to change your business model. It was just this, the outside circumstances. It was really hard fought, and then it just was apparent that this needed to happen. And then I love what you're talking about, sharing the new and change management in general. It's not all about, it can't be all about taking something away. It has to be like, well, what are we doing instead? What's the positive thing that we have to latch onto in its place? And more than anything, it feels like that's what people want. And if they've been loyal to your brand, it's more like they've been loyal to you. As your business model is such a personal one, and your staff are so hospitable, and your connections in the community are so deep that it's not so much that you're a commodity that people miss. It's the relationship, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it was seeing us. It was being a part of our regular life. And our new space is sunny. It's really bright and cheery. We filled it with plants, something that, we had some plants in our old space, but boy, we just kind of went plant crazy, in our new space. And we have a big garage door. And I think all of that really showed that we are still swinging the doors wide open for hospitality. And even though it's a slightly different model, we're inviting you into our world. And our world is one of coffee and roasting and farmers, and you get to be immersed into it. And I think that was sort of out of all that we went through, I felt like we swung the door wide open to say, actually, we're not leaving you. We're inviting you deeper in.
Wow.
And we're inviting you to get to know even more of us. We're going to be more personal with you. We're going to share some of our trials and some of our experiences. And we're also going to share our story and the stories of our farmers. And, as I was kind of thinking about this interview, Chris, I was thinking about what we went through, and I thought there isn't a single farming family that we have talked to and work with that doesn't have almost this exact same story. I don't mean as far as equipment and things like that, but they've all faced, is my business going to make it? Is my farm actually going to move from one generation to the next generation? And, they've all had to make difficult decisions along the way in order to see their farms thrive and be able to see them even pass on, to the next generation and even do better things. And that is something now that we can totally empathize with. And we can also share our story with our customers and say, by the way, our farmers have the same story, and overcoming of problems, moving on to the new kind of story. And we invite you into it all.
Beautifully said. Wow. Yeah. In some interviews working up to a sustainability series of talking with farmers about diversification of their farms, into, growing different crops, making it work, pivoting the model that they have in order to provide a livelihood for the people that they employ, and to continue to keep the farm going. And, it may not look exactly like what they wanted it to look like 10 years ago, but in order to keep it going, they needed to make changes that today allow them to continue to farm coffee. It's one of the more promising things that farms do is crop diversification. And in cafes, it seems that in a similar way, like diversifying the way that you're willing to let your business evolve over time, is a great way to set yourself up for success when stuff like this comes down the pike, which it will. There's going to be unforeseen things that happen, and there are going to be things that happen that you generate yourself, that are going to still be hard to do. But if you're willing to see the vision take a different form than it was just laid out in your business plan when you first opened, then that flexibility is really going to allow you to bend and not break, right?
Absolutely. And I think our customers change. And I think, along the way, as we evolve, we meet their needs better too. And I think, the world wants transparency. They want to be more involved in knowing where things are coming from and seeing a little more of the process. And so, when we joke that our roastery was kind of hidden and in the back, I also feel like, maybe that was more reality than we knew. There were people that were walking into our old space and honestly didn't even know that we roasted coffee, yet alone, know that we were so connected with our farming partners the way that we are. And so now that is the dialogue that we're having out there over and over again. And you can't miss it, when you come into our space, because you're basically coming into our roastery. So I think it's, physically, we had a lot of changes, just from a space perspective, but also just from a business perspective, we really changed our mindset a lot too. So, yeah.
When we're talking about the team that you have at the shop and then the team that you have now, imagine that there's some adjustment that had to be made. Did you have to basically say, look, we're moving our location, there's not going to be a job for everybody, or did everybody get a job? Like, how did you manage the transferring of, job roles and staff? Because I know last time we talked, what was really at the heart of what you wanted to do in leading people was providing them an opportunity to develop themselves in their career. And if Joe Bean can do that by giving somebody reign over the beer program, for example, then that's what you said yes to and saw it thrive. So now, did you see a falling off of staff, and how did you manage that in a way that it turned out okay?
That's a big question, and one I really kind of wrestled with a lot. yes, we did have to let some people go. And obviously that was really hard for us. One of the big changes, of course, is that we don't have a full kitchen here. And so, I didn't need a kitchen staff. I had a whole kitchen team at our old location and with our old model. And so, not having to let go of our whole kitchen team was really hard. But once again, Chris, I think timing is everything. And I found it really interesting when I look at where we were all at. It was a team that had been together for close to 8 years and had almost had no turnover. And so we were very loyal to each other. We knew each other really well. But in that 8 years, I had also seen a lot of personal change going on with a number of our team, and recognizing that, sometimes those shifts and those changes, just like with us as a company, when something does end, it really brings in the new. And many of our team members that had been with us for a long time were really positioned and ready to do something completely different. So the timing of it all, I can't say that it always works this way, but it worked for us this way. Right when we were getting ready to make some choices, my head chef came to me and she said, Kathy, I really recognize that I want to teach cooking and I don't want to just cook for a living. I really want to teach. And so she was making some major choices there. And I, encouraged her and we, talked it through. And so when we made our changes, it was a release for her to leave. I think she would have stayed out of, just a strong sense of loyalty. And, I'm going to see this through to the end. But I said, actually, I want you to go. I release you and, sort of let you go into the new thing. And, we've continued to support her, out there. And, you even mentioned like our Jim, he was in charge of our beer program and he did such a great job for us, in charge of our beer program that he ended up getting a job at one of our beer reps that we worked with, and they saw what he had done there and they opened up the door for him to take it a step further, which he really said, you know what? I really love being involved with beer, and that's actually a career I'd like to choose. And so right at that time, we were sort of dividing, even with him, he was choosing a different path than us. So, they weren't all as sort of neat and clean as that. But we definitely had a lot of stories like that. One of the things that did happen, I did mention to you earlier, I'm not sure if it was before the interview or not, but when we were going through some things in 2018, our head roaster Janine actually had qualified for the roasters competition to be one of the national competition. And right at the time, we were going through a lot of stuff as a company, and she also was going through some stuff personally. She found out she was pregnant and was actually having a pretty rough pregnancy. So the Specialty Coffee Association allowed her to defer that her placement in the competition. And so she didn't actually go until 2019. And I bring this all up because, she stayed with us. But by the time we came into that competition in 2019, she was really in a different place. We brought the baby with us to the actual competition. I think it was the first competitor that actually had a newborn baby there.
I remember seeing posts about that.
Yeah, and I watched the baby while she competed, and it was all super fun. But while we were there, she's great and amazing, and she had some real honest dialogue with me. And she said, Kathy, some of the team that we had to let go, she said some of them were a little hurt, by you. And I said, Janine, do I need to fix it? And she said, yeah, Kathy, you need to fix it. And so right after that competition, I came back to Rochester and just spent some time fixing it and making sure that people that had once been, kind of in our family were okay. And, it's a humbling process to go back and say, listen, as a company, we had to make some decisions and some choices, but it was never about us not wanting to be connected to you, in a personal way and in a family way. And it made a huge difference. I think that, even the ones that sort of didn't leave, in some, maybe a cleaner way, we've been able to patch that up and make sure that they're okay. And they're all really, sort of remained connected, and they're all really doing well. So.
Great. I have a question more about that. If you could elaborate a little bit more about what you feel you could have done differently to avoid having to go back to fix it. Is it communication, or is it just being more thorough about intentions and all the stuff that can allay people's fears that it was about them, or like, what would you advise to somebody else to say, hey, we feel we made the right decision for our company, but in the way that we handled it, maybe there's some things that you would have done differently, and then you should do it this way and learn from our experience.
Yeah, I think that, as you build teams, teams can feel like family, and you would never, when you make choices to reduce the amount of team that you have for whatever reason, you have to make those choices. In our case, we didn't have a kitchen anymore, and so therefore I didn't need a kitchen team. And so, those are tough, very tough conversations, and ones that need to be handled with a lot of empathy and a lot of understanding. And as much as we tried to do that at the time, I think that we were lacking just some emotional ability to do that, just because of being tired and being really in the midst of some of the trials that we were in ourselves. And so in retrospect, probably bringing a little bit more of that to the table is what I would have done and would have done today if I was able, if this was today. But at the same time, I think that they're not relationships that were lost in any way, and that we were able to go back and kind of resurface and say, listen, I just want you to know that I care for you, and I value you, and I value our friendship, and, that we were going through some things, and, I just want to make sure you're okay.
So this is a whirlwind of, this journey has been so peaks and valleys, and I'm so glad that you all have come out on the other side with hope and new life, and that the relationships are in a good place and in a positive place. It feels really exciting to hear that kind of a story, because in the middle of all of this, it just seems kind of hopeless, right? You all are very resilient, obviously, and in the midst of it, obviously, it might not seem like that, but just knowing the story up into this moment, it's really inspirational. I wonder if you could kind of give some final advice to those who are thinking about change, or maybe going through similar types of struggles with their business, and they know that they need to make some kind of a severe change in order to keep going. How would you advise them to proceed with this change in a way that is going to be healthy and also fruitful?
I was actually reading this morning something that I think really applies to this, and it's a really simple statement. And it said, when you encounter things, difficulties, and problems that maybe you can't see the way around, and you're not sure how to get through them, or around them, one of the things is to just keep moving forward, literally keep moving forward. And I think that there is hope in movement. And as we choose to not just stay still and not just be paralyzed by fear when we encounter things, I think then that's when things begin to break. And whatever small steps, I really have this philosophy that there is always something that you can be doing, always. Whether it's just simply going for a walk and clearing your head, or calling on counsel of a friend, or in our case, sometimes we would take a step back and we would meet together and we would just write things down, and we would write down like what's going on, and what do we need to address, and what can we do today, and what can't we do today. And I think just being able to take any small steps and move yourself forward and not just stay fearful is really important.
Kathy, this has been wonderful. And I know that what you've advised people and your story is really encouraging to so many. I am, again, thrilled to have had you back on the show. How can we stay in touch with Joe Bean, get some coffee, and just stay up to date?
We actually just relaunched our website. So joebeanroasters.com. Take a look at our new website. We are relaunching a subscription program. We are calling it Perpetual Joy. It's kind of a CSA model for coffee. We bring in very seasonal, very curated coffees from our farming partners, and we rotate them through our subscription program, which we just really love the name of. So, perpetual joy, it keeps you perpetually happy with coffee, right? And yeah, and if you're ever in Rochester, come and stop by our roastery. We love seeing people. My understanding, Chris, is that you might be coming back to upstate New York area come sometime soon, right?
Yes, I am. I need to make it back up there, and that will be the first place that I make a priority to go to.
We don't even have snow right now, so we're looking pretty good for weather up here, which is amazing.
It's a lot like Kentucky.
Is that right? Oh yeah,
No
I guess
snow.
so.
Well,
Yeah.
I just feel that, man, that subscription title is so great
Isn't that
because
fun?
it's really fun. And I feel like that's the way we feel after talking to you here on the show. Again, it's really been a joy. And I thank you for joining us here at Keys to the Shop.
Thank you, Chris. I had one statement I just wanted to leave with, which I think is the door of trouble is oftentimes the gateway to hope. And I really do believe that that's true. So I hope that that happens for many of the customers and people that are listening to this podcast as well.
Well, I am just, again, really excited to have talked with Kathy, and it underscores the importance for me of reaching out to your peers for help. And in a lot of ways, that help is just their story, the creative ideas that others might have that you benefit from. It can't be overstated how important that is, especially in these times of uncertainty. Kathy brought up such a great point that she can empathize a bit more with farmers who live with this kind of uncertainty all the time. And now I think a lot of us can also feel that same way to say, okay, now it's all on the line for a lot of us. And so reaching out to ask for help and taking steps forward constantly, such great advice from Kathy. And even my just reaching out to Kathy for an interview, if I had never done that, we would have never gotten to hear this story. And that's not to say that, hooray me. It's just you can reach out to friends that you know right now that you might not expect that they'll have a word of encouragement or wisdom that makes the difference in your business. But I guarantee you that information, that key, that wisdom is out there. I'm glad that we got to feature Kathy's wisdom on this show. The last thing I'll say, I think, is that right now there are so many people whose spirits feel crushed by what's happening. This is one of the most uncertain times to be a business owner, to work in the hospitality industry. But if we reach out, if we are honest and increase our communication, just like Kathy had to go back in, make things right relationally with a few people because in the midst of those hard times, she couldn't empathize as much as she could as she got distance from it. Let this be a lesson to us that we need to make sure that we are connected, we allow others to help us, and that we are able to allow our business to pivot and refocus and take this time to reevaluate who we are, what we're doing, and how to move forward, even if it means changing the way that we express our business. Kathy's example is one that shows us that even though she would have chosen probably not to have gone through those things, as a result of it, it allowed her to become more honest with who they really wanted to be as a business. And that is the most I could hope for all of us in the midst of our difficult circumstances. And I want to thank Kathy for being so vulnerable and sharing on the show again her story and the story of Joe Bean Coffee Roasters. Now, I'd encourage you all to check out their website, joebeanroasters.com, and follow them on Instagram as well. Maybe sign up for that Perpetual Joy subscription as well. Now, if you want the transcript from this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, and on the contact page, just fill your information out and click Sign Me Up for the email newsletter. And in that newsletter, you will receive the transcripts, also the links of resources mentioned in each interview, and a list of suggested related episodes from our library of 300 episodes, of over 300 episodes actually, Keys to the Shop. And this list is going to be a list of probably the most encouraging episodes that we've had on the show, just so that you can consume positivity in these times and just help you through making some hard decisions that will hopefully end up being good for your business in the long run. So again, keystotheshop.com, on the contact page, fill that out and you're all set to go. And if you want to reach out to me directly for just sending me questions or feedback about the show, or maybe you want to reach out about Keys to the Shop consulting and see if that's right for your business, helping you level up your operations, management, leadership, and quality, just reach out, Chris at keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS at keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this conversation really did leave you encouraged. And in this time, please don't hesitate to ask some questions of me. I will do my best to answer those and even post them on the Instagram account over at Keys to the Shop on Instagram, just so that the community can benefit from our conversation. And I want this podcast to serve you, especially in these times. So thanks again. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.